What about you, Anne? Did you surf?
No surfing today. I was at work. I had a big day at work.
Well, it wasn't all time, Anne, so you haven't really missed anything.
Well, this is my opportunity to interview you guys because you've been interviewing everyone else. So, so I want to do it much the same as you, but a little bit different. I want to know a little bit more about you because I have to write a piece for my writing workshop. But I'll start with you, Ted. When did you start surfing?
Okay, so I know I have a very strong memory. I don't know exactly the day, but it was summertime. It was at Parkdale Beach. My friend Michael Carroll got a white painted Mal surfboard with a D fin for Christmas or for something. So we went down the beach at Parkdale and he let me have a go. And I thought it was the best thing I had ever done. It was just fantastic.
Straight away.
But I mean, I wasn't that young. I mean, you'll probably think this is young. I was 14. Mm-hmm. I was, at high school. Mm-hmm. But I just couldn't believe how good it was. It was only like a piddly, tiny little summertime wave at Parkdale over the shallows, if that makes sense. So nothing.
Where is Parkdale?
It's on the bay. It's not even a surf beach. It's just occasionally gets waves. So Michael Carroll ended up not taking up surfing, and I ended up joining the crew of guys at the high school I was at who all surfed, and I was just desperate to get aboard. And somehow they just, at that time, you just got put in touch with people that had boards to sell. Like it was relatively easy. And, it was in the, now I'm going to say late 60s, like 68. This is showing you how old I am. But it was relatively easy to find people that had beautiful Mal surfboards to sell. And I don't know how I had the money, but I must have saved up or something. But I got a pretty pristine George Rice stringerless 8-foot bevel tail with a massive psychedelic fin, massive, like it was called a skeg in those days. And I had the psychedelic round George Rice logo, not the standard George Rice. It was just, if I could have got like a better board, I don't think I could have. It was just, for me, it was exactly what I wanted.
Like a Mal, it was a Malibu.
It was a what?
It was a Mal?
It was definitely a Mal. It was 8 foot, but it was, it was in that era when they were moving from full-on long Mals, proper loggers, to the kind of Wayne Lynch and the Evolution kind of boards, which just had this had a V bottom and a bevel tail, and a V tail, if you like, a V bottom tail and a flat bottom to the nose, but just a great board.
And so did you ride that for a long time?
I wish I could say I did, but I think I actually was desperate to keep getting boards. And again, like I said, like it was pretty easy to find people that had boards for sale. So I think I actually sold it. It was a great board. I should have kept it. I would have. Now I'd be just so happy if I'd kept it, but I didn't. Yeah. And I got another board, and I got heaps of boards since. I mean, just secondhand. You just change them over. As soon as I was surfing mostly Point Leo on the east coast, not our coast. So mostly we'd get in Mrs. Clark's. That's not my mum. There was a whole family that lived on Beach Road in Parkdale, and we'd all store our boards at her house. And she didn't mind for some strange reason. And she was just such a great mum. On the weekends when she wasn't working, she'd say, "Hey boys, do you want to go down the surf?" And she'd drive us down the surf.
It's sounding a little bit like Cooley in Parkdale.
Cooley? Yeah, Coolangatta.
Coolangatta and Parkdale.
It was a scene. It wasn't just us either. I think there was a few groups down there.
Yeah, there was Mentone, Morty Alec crew.
Yep.
I
Yep.
was Brighton Beach, Malay crew. But I surfed Mentone Beach a lot. Really good banks along here, low tide, southwester. Great.
Yeah. Mm.
There you go. Some of our crew were from Mentone. They actually started surfing Mentone and then they walked down the beach to Parkdale because they could store their board at Mrs. Clark's.
Clark's.
Shirley's.
Well, Shirley. Oh, Shirley.
We were allowed to call her Shirley when she wasn't there, but when we went in, we said, "Hi,
Shirley
Mrs. Clark."
Clark. I love it. I love it. What's happened to Shirley Clark?
It was so sad. They moved away from that beautiful house. It had a pool, like not
It's
an
like the
in-ground pool.
ultimate adolescent's house, right?
Absolutely, just kids everywhere. There was 4 kids, and they had a Clark pool, out of the ground pool, so you could splash around in that if there's no
Like
surf.
Whirlpool? Did Whirlpool?
A circular one. So it was just like paradise.
Yeah.
And then they sold it. It was like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And she moved to Turadin. Like, it's on the way to the Phillip Island from Parkdale, so you could actually go and visit it. But I never did. But the other guys probably did drop in and see her. And then only about this is going to sound like a long time ago. Only about 5 years ago, she died. And it was like really sad because her kids had dispersed all over Australia, but they all came back obviously. And then all these guys that I remember, I sort of stay in touch with some of them, came back for the funeral. It was just like old times. It was so weird. They were all just as bad as they were, like really bad, like naughty. Not doing anything really bad, but just cracking jokes and. It was just like old times. It was just fantastic, but it was all because she was just such a wonderful, I suppose she was interested in surfing, and she just wanted the kids to have a good time, like all the kids, not just her kids, but everyone. So she just took us surfing.
It sounds like an incredible, generous spirit.
Yes, she was. She was just a wonderful lady. Yeah.
And how someone like that can just be a catalyst for all those things to happen.
Exactly. And it was like Coolies in Parkdale. It was a scene.
Oh, that's so good. All right, Glenn, what about you? When did you start surfing and where?
Okay, I think I was probably about 9 or 10 in New Zealand. And we lived up on the northeast coast around a place called Mount Maunganui. And I had my older brother. I used to just idolise my older brother. Everything that he did, I wanted to do. And he really only had one thing in mind. It was girls from a very young age. And he took up surfing because it meant girls, more girls. But,
was he one of those guys that bolted the board to the top of the car?
Well, he might as well have, because he's into cars. You couldn't get him near the beach now. He's just, I used to say, why didn't you keep surfing? And he said, no, I didn't like it, but I like the girls. And so he had to take me surfing because we lived at Tauranga, which wasn't far from Mount Maunganui, and you could get a ferry across. It was only really quick. And the first board was... my neighbour, mate of mine, because we had a big it was like a harbour around us, and there was little piers behind some of the houses, and there was a board that was just tied up, and we never saw anyone use it, so we figured it must be ours. So we got on one on each end. It was not a Mal, Ted. It was massive.
Yeah.
And kind of dragged it, half carried it, and it was our board. We used to just leave it over at the mount. And so that's kind of where I started. But I also, at the same time, I had one of those old styrene foam boards, just those big, thick kind of round things, no fins or anything. But I thought I'd make it thin. And I remember going down to my dad's factory. He was a sign writer.
Can I ask how old you were, Glenn? How old were you when this was happening?
Probably 10, maybe 11, something like that. And I remember getting tin snips and cutting out a piece of galvanised metal, you know, like full of burrs and everything, so it was pretty radical. And cutting out a fin, cutting a hole in the bottom of the styrene and using PVA glue, best glue, and trying that out. And the first wave just went straight into the sand, fin went out, cut my foot, and it was a mess. But no, I actually got a hand-me-down board from my brother, which was a twin fin shaped at the Bob Davey surfboard factory by Al Byrne, who ended up moving to Queensland, and he's like one of the biggest names in board shaping. Unfortunately, something happened. I think he died in Bali a few years ago, but I wish I had that board. It was incredible. It was one of the first twin fins. It was probably 1970.
Wow.
6'5" twin fin, little tiny fins, big thick tail. And then we came over to Australia. My dad got offered a job over here, and
How old were you?
over here.
How old were you?
I was 12 when we arrived here.
Mm-hmm.
So straight out of this almost rural area, coastal area, to Melbourne. And I had never even seen a Mediterranean person. I couldn't believe I met an Italian person, and it was just amazing. My whole knowledge of Australia was Skippy. That's all I knew. So we lived in East Bentley. I wouldn't even go in the backyard without shoes on because I was convinced there was snakes and spiders. So it was a big learning curve. But I was pretty heartbroken because we were so far from the surf, and that was our lifestyle in New Zealand. We were, you know, we would canoe, sail, surf. We were always at the beach. Mm. And Dad found out about a club called the Morty. It was at the Morty Surf Shop. Ted, you know, it's called the Surfari Club.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so I was the Surfari Club. So the guy, yeah, he had a big old blue bus, a Dodge bus, and Lindsay Mudge, his name was. He owned the shop, and he used to just take us kids down the beach on the week, like just Sundays. Cost us, I think, 20 cents or whatever it was, chipping for petrol. And he'd just load the bus up with all us little groms and take us down to Lorne or Torquay. We went down the East Coast a lot, down the Pines. So I always knew each weekend I could get to the coast. And that was great. I was the longest reigning member in that club in there. And I still run into people who were in that club. This was I think I was in it till 1976. And
wow.
I see people who say, oh, you know, I know you, I remember you, Surfari Club. So people down here used to talk about the club, and they said it was an instant crowd. They'd see the bus roll up and all these kids jump out and just, that was it. It was over. But yeah, I surfed in the bay a lot, especially down the end of South Road, Brighton Beach, when they had the beach bars there. We used to even be able to sneak in between sets and get between the bars, so we could jump off the platforms and you know, bomb on the waves. So you basically stand there and just put your board down and start surfing off. And
wow,
good days. You know, we used to get some pretty good waves in there too. Yeah.
I do not remember there being any good waves.
We had great waves. Well, this is Brighton Beach, not.
I think Brighton was much better. That was superior wave down there.
Well, it was. It's got the biggest fetch of water from the southwest direction, so it's got a lot of swell.
I was always impressed. We'd drive past. We'd surf there a couple of times, but we'd drive past it and see it. You know, you're on the way to town. You go, "Oh my God, why didn't we bring the boards? It's so good."
Oh, look, there were occasions when, even when I got my license, we'd come back to Melbourne. We might not have got waves down here. We get waves in the bay.
Yeah.
Mm.
Or else we'd come down here with grass ski down Duffields Road.
Yeah. And Brighton was a scene too. And it was well known that was the place to go, I think.
Yeah.
Because they used to have the surf movies there at the Brighton Town Hall.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was massive. Like, I don't know what happened, but there was like either the guys from all of the coast used to turn up, or it was just the whole of the bay crew from all the different suburbs would go to the Brighton Town Hall, and they put on a movie like Evolution or what?
Tubular Swells.
Tubular Swells.
Oh,
that was a bit later.
Yeah.
But people in the audience were better than the movie. They were hooting and climbing over the seats and shouting at the screen. It was the best night. You were bound to enjoy yourself because the crowd that was there was so crazy that they would do anything during the movie, and people shouting stuff.
They're probably all starved of waves.
They were starved of waves. So seeing a wave on a screen was a really big deal. And they're very excitable, like I was. And so we're all charging off each other, I think, We hadn't had a surf, you're waiting for a surf, probably only on the weekend. And you remember this, Glenn, you'd always wait for the southerly wind, southwesterly. You couldn't surf unless there was a gale blowing onshore. And so that didn't always happen every afternoon. So as soon as that happened, you were down there surfing. And so if there was a surf movie on, especially if you hadn't had a surf for a while, you go crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So, Ted, how was your family about you surfing? Were they happy that you surfed?
Well, not really. I mean, that was the difference between my family and Mrs. Clark, was that I don't think my dad or mum ever drove me or drove any of the boys or any of the girls down the surf. We never got a lift from them to the surf. I don't say that they were, they didn't ban it. They didn't say you can't go surfing, but they probably were a bit upset I was going surfing when I should have been doing homework, or, you know what I mean? Where were you? I was at Mrs. Clark's. You could say that, you see. You could say Mrs. Clark's. You didn't have to say, I was at Martin's house. I'm at Mrs. Clark's. So that's cool. Mrs. Clark's a nice lady.
Did Mrs. Clark have a husband, or was she on her own?
No, her husband died. I think it was, again, pretty sad. He died early on. And her main thing was that she moved, I think, to Parkdale because her brother lived in Mentone, and he was the Mentone chemist. So Mrs. Clark was named Mrs. Clark, but her original name was Libis or something like that. But anyway, everyone knew sort of, the local chemist. I knew him, he knew me. It was kind of weird, but and there were other people like that around, and they knew our family. But so there was another guy, Robert Bamford, who was a really cool surfer. He used to hang out with us, but his dad was a state bank home inspector. So you have to go around the state and inspect either buildings or the value of properties. Do you know what I mean? So he always used to try and get jobs where he'd, maybe he was just lucky or he's put his hand up for jobs down the coast. So he was one that we could get a lift with, especially school holidays, or, when he was working during the week, you could go, okay, Mr. Bamford, let's go. We're in the car, and he'd inspect the house or drop us off or even hang out with us. But it was all about negotiating ways to get down the surf. Anything you could do to get away from the shitty, I thought, crappy waves of Parkdale. They were pretty crap at Parkdale, by the way.
Oh, I love it. That was kind of your mission, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my parents weren't against it, but they, if I'm being completely honest, I suppose they were introduced to surfing by my cousins, by my mum's brother's family, and they had a house, beautiful house in Shoreham, and we used to go down there sometimes, and Ian, the eldest, would surf Pines, and Chris, who was my age, and I would go up on the hill and watch him surf. He was like hot as. He was like a cross-stepping, hot, longboard, logger. He was really good to watch.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was kind of in the family a bit. It wasn't something really separate to what your family.
Yeah, well, it could have been regarded as being negative because he wasn't really, firing at university, at high school or anything. He wasn't a good guy, he was hanging out with the other surfy dudes. So it wasn't a good direction to go, but he wasn't so bad, or they weren't so convinced everything was horrible. They didn't think of it like other families did, I think, as being a kind of a drug-taking negative.
Yeah.
I don't think he was a drug taker. I think he was mostly, a beer drinker.
Yeah. Okay. So they didn't love it, but they weren't difficult about it. So
they weren't that difficult, no.
No. What about you, Glenn? How was your family about surfing?
Oh, they were really good about it. I actually, I was very independent when I was young. I mean, I had the Surfari Club, which is great. But I used to, like I always had part-time jobs, just earning money so I could get down here over holidays. And I stayed at Anglesey, I stayed at Torquay, Glen and Ted a lot. And I used to just get the train down on Friday nights. I was probably 14 or 15. And I used to just have, my sleeping bag over my board. So I'd have something to sleep in. And I spent a lot of nights sleeping on the steps of the fun parlour at Bowen Heads Caravan Park just to come down here. And during the day, I'd throw all my gear in the bushes and I'd surf. And often I'd have to hitchhike when I got down here because I might miss the bus. So I'd just get out and hitchhike. And my folks were really cool with it, I would never let my kids do that. I think they're very irresponsible. But I'd do anything, like Ted said, I'd do anything to get down here. Made friends with any kids at school that might have had holiday houses down here, and that was my escape really. And so they were really dealing with some heavy stuff with my older brother.
Yeah, right.
And so they were quite comfortable with it. In fact, I remember being down here. I was probably in fourth form, I think, and I'd been down here for a week, and I decided, because I met all these people, I'd stay for another week. And I rang Mum, and she said, "What do you want?" So I'm just letting you know that I'm down at Anglesey, I'm staying another week. And she said, "All right." And I thought, okay, that's great. So I had a lot of freedom, but I think I was pretty responsible too.
They could tell that, for you were able to self-manage.
Yeah. I mean, I got in trouble a few times. Once when I was at Island Heads, and it was actually, remember the old petrol strikes we used to have? And there was no cars around. I actually paddled out. I hadn't even caught a wave, and I was just paddling out near Beacon, and my board spun around under me. I was duck diving, and it just kind of spun and got out of my hands and chopped through the back of my heel. And and I knew it wasn't good because there's lots of blood. And I thought, wow.
How old were you? How old were you when that happened?
Probably at that stage, I didn't have a license. So I was probably about 16 or something. So I had to make my way up the beach, and I remember feeling my heel flapping as I was walking. And I was a real mess, and all my stuff was stashed over at Raff's over the other side of the bridge. And there's just no traffic around. And one car stopped, and he was an intern at the hospital. And he picked me up and picked up my gear and ran me into the hospital, and,
Oh, wow.
Stitches, and I've still got the scar on that heel. I'll never forget that. Like, of all the people that stopped.
Yeah. How lucky were you?
Yeah, really lucky. But
do you remember his name?
No.
It's like your guardian angel.
Oh, it was amazing. I really knew I was in trouble, even as a young kid. You think you're immortal.
Yeah.
Things happen out in the water, and back then I used to put myself into situations I wouldn't even dream of doing now. And I don't know why. I just did it. There's a beach, there's a waves, go. Especially at 13th.
Yeah.
We were having some pretty big days. But yeah, I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't even think of it now.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's so interesting, hearing about all those stories about growing up, and as a different time where you kind of just had to do it yourself too. Like quite different for kids now, where they're kind of... Yeah,
there was a period, I think, in the early 70s, and Ted, you can relate to this. I mean, you talk about the Brighton Town Hall. I used to pin sheets up for a screen. That's what it was like. You're allowed to smoke in the theatre. It was like those sort of days. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But there was that whole it was just post-Vietnam. And it was the whole Mexican cardigan era. It was Nat Young, and it was just that beautiful kind of country feeling. Everything was related to, it was Real Morning the Earth, which is a film I saw at the Brighton Town Hall for the first time. And it just had such a fantastic kind of, I don't know, it's just that kind of country feeling. Even the surf magazines back then, they weren't commercial like they are now. It was like you would see, you know, people like ads, and it'd be people sitting in front of a fire outside, you know, the Mexican cardigans, and it was just such a good vibe. It was real.
Well, it was more a club, wasn't it? I mean, now it's like every single second person wants to surf, whereas then you had to kind of really be driven. Like hearing from both you guys, you were sort of driven to do it. It's sort of, you couldn't help, you had to do it, go.
And there were some people that were doing it as a lifestyle, and probably because they were avoiding the draft. I mean, I wasn't old enough, but there were guys that would surf all the time because they really couldn't put their head above, you know, they get arrested. They have to be subculture. They have to be beyond being arrested. The police didn't come after them. Actually, I found that out later, but they had to sort of hide so that they'd either live in their cars or live in the bush. They'd find old houses. This is the Wayne Lynch story, basically. It's not my story. I don't really know anyone that actually did it, but it's in that movie, Morning of the Earth, where they all lived in beautiful country houses. And I do relate to this, Glenn. I do remember I didn't hitch much, but when I did hitch, I loved it. It was, I think it is getting a bit like this now, but there was always, if you had a board, you'd only get picked up by combis because they could put the board in, and they would always pull over. And getting in a combi in those days was like getting into a magic paradise of surfing. It was, and hippiness. Like, it was like you'd go in the back of someone's combi, and because they'd be in the front, you'd have to get in the back. There'd always be a mattress and some kind of groovy poster or something. And it was just like magic, and incense burning, other stuff burning, of course. But it was just like, you know, heaven, you know, hitching. But maybe it was dangerous. I didn't think it was, but no one would pick you up.
Didn't really get that sense of danger. It was kind of, I think, you know, everyone is so paranoid now, but maybe with good reason. But back then, I always felt quite comfortable. It's, you know, I hitchhiked a lot. Yeah.
No, it's a different time now. Really.
There is I think there's an emerging culture of young people now who are going back to that lifestyle.
Yes.
I mean, I don't want to say that it's been like that for a long time, but I think it's starting to emerge again. I mean, there's been bits of it, I suppose, continuing on, but now I reckon some of those young guys that you see around driving combis mostly, they're back into that. They're learning about.
Yeah. Because it was such a good vibe.
Yeah.
But it was really just, let's just have fun.
Well, let's just go surfing, I think.
Let's just go surfing and have fun.
Yeah.
And what's life about, really, you know? Yeah. So I should just sort of ask one closing question, perhaps. What is your ideal surfing holiday?
Okay.
Uncrowded.
Hey?
Uncrowded.
Yeah. Which is actually my other question. It's sort of, maybe before that I want to ask you, what is your COVID crowd strategy?
Well, I thought it was getting up really early, but the car park was full. So I got a few good early sessions, but I really don't like having to paddle out in the dark. But it's the only way you can get early waves. So I've been sneaking away and kind of trying to avoid Torquay a bit.
Yeah.
I haven't surfed there that much.
Go different spots.
Yeah.
It's the same. That's what I do too. And that's what I did at COVID. I mean, I don't do it now, but I was doing that. I just I drive until I found a spot that wasn't too crowded. Really, I didn't get up early.
Yeah.
In fact, when it all started, I kind of made a bit of a stand, and I didn't surf for almost a month. I just didn't want to be part
That's
of.
right.
Yeah, I just didn't want to be part of. It kind of didn't feel right. Like people lost their jobs, and people couldn't get down from Melbourne. It just didn't feel right that hey, it's party time. Let's hit the waves. I mean, I think I've got a pretty strong work ethic too, but I thought no. I actually hope they really close the beaches, because I was going down and just driving around and looking at the crowds, especially around Torquay, and thinking this is just insane. Don't people care? Like it's But I gave up. I thought, well,
eventually, everyone else is doing it. Well,
yeah. But I did. I was really picky about when I went.
Yeah.
Just trying to fly under the radar and keep out of other people's way. If it got too crowded, I'd get out. So I'd try and get really intense. Like half an hour. That's enough. Get in and get out. And I still do. It's like pretty rare I stay in the water longer than half an hour. Not like Ted. He's out there all day.
Yeah, see, I did the alternative strategy.
Yeah.
You just go out, and then unfortunately I'd go out, there'd be a place where there'd be no one, and then I'd go out and stay out until it got really crowded, and I wouldn't even notice because it was out so long. It was getting really, really crowded. And then you'd realise that, you might have stayed out a bit long and you probably shouldn't have been out there, so I'd come in. But no, I didn't really. It was just more of Glen's strategy. I didn't avoid it. I never actually thought that I should not surf. But I did travel within the postcode. I did go as far as Roadies once, but there's a lot of places that you can surf where there's not that many people. If you want to, you can even surf 13th at another break, another car park.
Yeah.
But the best, I reckon, even though I know a lot of people would say that they'd love to have a surf holiday, Glen will have a different idea of, going overseas I've had some great surfs overseas and loved staying in places that were really exotic and stuff. But I reckon the best surfing trips are road trips up the east coast of Australia, like just pulling in to little tiny towns and point breaks and checking them out and putting a tent up. I was often in a van with other people, just staying somewhere along that beautiful south and north coast of New South Wales, Victoria too, and eventually going to paradise, which would be Queensland, anywhere in Queensland where the water's warm. And the first moments that you hit the water after being in Victoria, and you put your hand in the water in Queensland water, and it feels like it's soft, like it's velvet, because it's not cold. It doesn't bite your hands. It's so wonderful. And I used to love doing that.
Yeah. It's kind of reminiscent of the combi vans with the things drying out in the back of them.
Yeah, and you would meet people along the way. It's a bit like the grey nomads, I suppose, but they're all young people. You'd meet crazy people in other combis.
Yeah, awesome. Glen, what's your favourite trip?
Well, I used to love going to Noosa. When the kids were small, we went to Noosa every year, and pretty rare that you actually got good waves. But I remember one year we got some amazing waves, and I was walking right around the granite and surfing there with only one or two other people in the water. That was good. But where we are right here, this is where I used to come surfing, and I love it here. I think we're so lucky. We've got such variety.
Yeah.
Most winds you can find somewhere to surf. New Zealand, I'd love to go back and do a big trip to New Zealand. I went back early last year, and a friend of mine's got a house up at Waipu right up the top, and so I had a bit of a scout around, and there's some epic breaks, and they just don't get crowded. So West Coast, New Zealand would be amazing. I think that's probably where I'd go. I've been to Hawaii twice, but I've surfed on the South Shore. I surfed Ala Moana. That was really good. But
Just
Other than
finding secret spots.
Yeah. I mean, I've been at Indo to Jakarta so many times because I used to get contracts doing ads over there. But I've never actually been out of the airport at Denpasar, you know. I was constantly flying into Denpasar and hopping across to Jakarta. I never surfed in Bali or anywhere, so not that interested either, you know. It just doesn't look like fun. The place is covered in rubbish and, you know, not my thing at all. I'm quite happy here.
Yeah.
We're not cloud break riders like you are.
No.
Oh gosh, I would call me cloud break survivor.
Yeah, well, that's at least you've tried it.
I tried it. I didn't win. Thank you guys.
No worries.
Yeah, so I've recorded it, so I might need some help putting it up on the site, but I think we should. Sorry, I've got all the kids coming in and being noisy. Anyway, thank you and good night. And
That's too much. You've got too much now.
no, I've got
You've got choices. Choices are good.
I love all the stories. It's been marvellous. I've really enjoyed it.
And I'm sorry, but I've been eavesdropping on part of it, and it's been a great yarn. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Steve.
Yeah, really fantastic. So, and thank you for all you do for the club. I was going to ask more questions about that, but I think we got enough.
That's a great club.
It's a great club.
Yeah, easy. Yeah.
All right.
So I won't see you for a few days. I'll be in Melbourne.
Okay.
All right. It's going to be pumping tomorrow.
Won't be.
It won't be bumping.
Nothing.
My day off. Won't be bumping.
Oh, really? I think 13th.
Yeah.
I think. I quite like 13th.
Maybe.
Might pop over there.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Good night.
That was fun. I enjoyed doing it.
Did you? Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good questions, Anne.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, good question.